would give them the documents, and then they'd have to be recorded. CPACE would pay the cost of recording of the documents. But John would have to Mr. McCullough would have to issue the levy like he would a tax levy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we have no legal responsibilities with this. I mean, if they install a system that fails or anything of that nature, we have no responsibility.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Who pays for the building inspector to come out and inspect all this, and pays for the
CPACE.
permit and all that?
CPACE. Oh, the building owner would have to pay for the permit. But as far as inspection to make sure that the boiler was really put in or that the windows were really replaced is CPACE. The town does not have a duty to inspect.
So the town doesn't? Of course they do.
Well, I mean, the town doesn't have it. Mr. Smith would have an obligation to make sure that all of the permits were pulled and to inspect it. But I mean...
So CPACE is going to inspect it, and the town, our building inspector, is not going to?
Whatever town code compliance is, the town would have to provide that service. For instance, if you require a certificate of occupancy or some type of permit to put in a new boiler, yes, our traditional rules would apply in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But when you said inspect, I thought you meant to secure...
Joe Smith has to go out and look at it and make sure that it complies to building. Right?
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So CPACE is paying him to go out there and do that?
No. When you initially said who pays to inspect it, I thought you meant who makes sure that the work is actually done. So if you're getting a $50,000 mortgage to put in new windows, who actually goes to make sure the new windows are there? In order to protect their security, CPACE would do that. But if you needed some sort of town permit to do any repairs or improvements, yes, the town would have to go out and inspect.
But for that, you'd pay the traditional building
Correct.
permit fees anyway.
Correct.
So it would be no different than any other operation.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Formica, you mentioned that there was a church that was interested in taking advantage of this.
My understanding is the community.
And yet, as I read this, it says commercial real property. A church fits under that category?
My understanding is they've been waiting for some time for this, contacted my office and worked through Gary's office. They must have had connections with that because they think they're ready to go. Is that correct?
That's correct. They've been waiting on it.
Yes, a church would qualify under this contract. It's commercial, industrial, basically non-residential properties.
Church has to answer to a higher authority.
Gary, if you could just address what we would be expected or asked to do in terms of promotion, please.
Based on the agreement, we have these good faith efforts, and they referred to our website distributing an informal letter from the chief elected official to local businesses regarding the program, and maybe conducting one or more workshops, or as they call them, roundtable events. I think that's quite capable through my office, working with the first selectman. I'm sure I can generate a letter that we can send out. I'd also note, in terms of the commercial nature of this, multifamily housing, 5 units or more would be eligible under this, is my understanding. So, and as many of you know, we already have the Solarize East Lyme program, which is for the single-family dwelling. So, and that's
This is the commercial part.
this is commercial, and there's no time limit on this. Whereas the Solarize East Lyme program ends October 22nd, this would be a more indefinite.
Could you answer some of the same questions that the tax collector in terms of time for your office, other than holding a round table or two, as you've done with the Solarize? Is there any issues from yours other than an inspection thing
well,
for zoning?
Once the Board of Selectmen takes action on this, if it's favorable, other than the roundtable, my involvement is no longer really, other than the promotion, it can be nominal. It's mainly going to fall on the tax collector. So, I certainly think it's a good thing in terms of solar power and renewable resources.
Let the sun shine.
Well, and this would cover not only solar power, but any energy upgrades you would make that would make the building insulation, new windows,
That's
anything
correct.
that would make an establishment more energy efficient.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Gary or the attorney or Mr. McCullough? Any questions? How would you like to proceed?
Why don't I put a motion on the table? I'll move the following Town of East Lyme resolution to approve commercial property assessed clean energy CPACE agreement. Whereas Section 157 of Public Act Number 12-2 of June 12, 2012, special session of the Connecticut General Assembly, the Act, established a program known as the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy CPACE program to facilitate loan financing for clean energy improvements to commercial properties by utilizing a state or local assessment mechanism to provide security for repayment of the loans. And whereas the Act authorizes the Clean Energy Finance and Investment Authority, the authority, a public instrumentality and political subdivision of the state charged with implementing the CPACE program on behalf of the state, to enter into a written agreement with participating municipalities, pursuant to which the municipality may agree to assess, collect, remit, assign benefit assessments to the authority in return for energy improvements for benefited property owners within the municipality and for costs reasonably incurred by the municipality in performing such duties. And whereas the Commercial Property Assessment Clean Energy CPACE agreement between the city between the town of East Lyme and the authority as attached hereto constitutes the written agreement authorized by the Act. Now therefore be it resolved, A, that we, the Board of Selectmen, constituting the legislative body of the town of East Lyme, hereby approves the CPACE agreement, and B, that Paul M. Formica, First Selectman, is hereby authorized and directed on behalf of the town to execute and deliver the CPACE agreement, substantially in the form attached to this resolution, for the purposes provided therein, together with such documents, other documents, as he or she, as he may determine to be necessary and appropriate to evidence, secure, and otherwise complete the CPACE agreement.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Motion is made second. Is there discussion?
I would just ask, because I do intend to vote in favor of this, that in 6 months or so, we could have both the town planner and the tax collector come to us and discuss progress under this and how the program is going. I'm just putting that forward as a request. Thank you.
Good idea.
Further discussion on this item? All those in favor indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now we have, we'll go back to the discussion on the Niantic River Headwaters Reserve. And as you know, I have recused myself from this particular conversation, so I will step out for the moment and ask that somebody call me back in when it's so time.
Okay. I am also going to recuse myself. I'm concerned that my decision may be not viewed as impartial or unbiased based on some other events that have occurred. So I'm going to step out as well. So I think I give it to you, Kev. Mr. Sear.
Okay, at our last meeting, Mr. Harney and came and made a presentation for us for the area of east side of Goldfinch, Terrence, and East Lyme for a parcel of about 166 acres of land. He came up with a price and a recommendation. We also had a presentation. Oh. Thank you, John. we're just going to have continuing discussion tonight on this. Is something that we want to continue to discuss, take action, and move it to authorize the first selectman to negotiate purchasing or possibly entering into an agreement to bring forward to the town. So, Steve, do you have anything you'd like to further present before we open it up to questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, if I could, Steve Harney, 20 Islanda Court, managing member of KSK Associates. Yeah, Whit Beals couldn't make it tonight. I think he had mentioned before he might have a conflict. So in your discussions, if there are any questions that I can answer, I'd certainly be happy to. If there's other stuff that we should kick off to him. He also asked, since our last meeting, some members of the public have reached out to him and as well me. So I think he's certainly happy to have a discussion on it if it's all right with the board, if they want to put off taking action on it. I think there is some plans to connect with the public, maybe do some mailings, maybe have a forum similar to the Darrow Pond open space when they had done that. But that was just something he had requested. You know, I had been traveling for a while and just got back. So if there's any questions I can answer, I'd be happy to. If not, I'm happy to take those questions or get the minutes from Karen. And as I said, I think we're not in a rush here to take action. If a little more time is needed to engage and answer some questions for the public if they haven't seen this or want to come to some other presentations.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
Is there any comments or questions for Steve by any members of the board? Roseanne?
Yes. Previously, when this presentation was made, it was suggested that there would be some harvesting of logs on the property. And in looking at the map, I'm wondering how those would be exported from the property.
Why don't I think if anything it's selective. Whatever they're going to do as far as foresting there, I think is going to fall under a sanctioned state sustainable forest management program. So I can't speak specifically to what they would do. I think it's come back to me through other foresters that it's a fairly mature forest, and I don't believe it's going to be to the extent that the property in Waterford that's under a WIPS, it's called a WIPS program, but it's a cost-sharing program with the state and the federal government on doing forestry. But I'm happy to, again, go back to WIT. And
I've looked at the map of the property, and so I was curious as to how, with the lay of the land, how you would get remove the trees from the property and exit.
well, they're actually right now we've granted an easement for land that's actually in Waterford where they've been taking trees out, or I think they're done with it. They're just got to remove the remaining trees that are there. So there is a point of access on Cedar Brook, and actually they're running. They've been doing some removal of trees, not on this specific property. But I don't believe it's going to be to the magnitude that's there. And again, I don't want to really speak to how it's done because I
Well,
don't
I just
know.
want to make certain that they weren't being exported through residential property
Okay.
subdivisions. Thank you.
Any other questions for Steve? Any comments on moving forward with the project, or would like to?
I think he had a great thought that we ought to probably put something together where
Some
we
information.
should put it out there and let people come in and comment, especially with the neighbors that are in that area and air the thing out more than, we've listened to it. I mean,
I know.
so, other people ought to
Well,
have a little
yeah.
chime in on it.
Because that's one of the things I think right now I think the public is an overall, if you ask anyone if they're interested, and Steve, I've talked to you about this.
Right.
Open space, yes, they're all for it, but then when you have to start saying dollar figures and choices to make, obviously, Oswegatchie Hills is a big concern, and if that ever became available, I think an education process for the public would be a good idea on your behalf, because I haven't heard any people speaking in behalf of it, and only one or two against it, because we've got enough open space.
No.
I think if there's an education program where you at least offer the public an opportunity to come to an informational session, get all the facts and ideas, especially the people that are going to be most affected in that neighborhood. I think it would be a good idea on your part.
Yeah, no, that's fine, and I think that that's in the spirit of what Whit had asked for. I think if we postpone the action and bring it to the public, because I think there's a little more than just, we throw the word open space around, there's a lot of water quality issues, like you say, the very specific neighborhood. So we're happy to inform the public, offer a few forums where we could do it similar to the PowerPoint, even some mailings similar to what the Trust for Public Land had done on Darrow. You know, that's fine. We all agree.
Might I suggest that you go to the Commission of Natural Resources and ask them if they would host such a public presentation? It could be done at the community center.
Yep.
Or here as well.
Yeah, we actually do. We called Kathy over at the community center, and yeah, we've been in touch and have met with Art Carlson. So all your suggestions are
Well,
percolating.
when this was done once before in reference to preservation of farming lands, there was a very considerable turnout. So I think there is interest. We'd like to have some of that public interest and support coming back to us.
That's great. No, I think we all agree. You know, we're not trying to do this in a vacuum, and I think the more it's vetted, the more it's brought to the residents and the taxpayers. You know, it's their town, so we're not by any means opposed to that.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, we'll just continue it on the agenda for under unfinished business in the future, Steve, and wait to hear from you as far as what your plans are for moving this forward to the public.
Okay. Thank you.
And
Thank
if
you.
you make sure we hear about, because I would be interested in attending any public sessions, just to, gauge interest and
Yep.
what's going on.
No, that's great. We'll keep everybody in the
Okay,
loop.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I think Rob has gone back to get Paul and Mark, so I'll fly back over.
Thank you very much. Next item is a signed call for the special town meeting,
Yeah.
9/17, and I'm sure you know that for the record that we will hear
I'll move the following. The Town of East Lyme notice of town meeting. Notice is hereby given of a special town meeting to be held on Wednesday, September 17, 2014, at the East Lyme Town Hall, 108 Pennsylvania Avenue, Niantic, Connecticut, at 7 p.m. to consider and take action on the following. 1, to approve the special appropriation in the amount of $280,000 from Open Space Fund 59 to purchase the property located on Assessor's Map 22, Lot 1, in abutting Quarry Dock Road, and to authorize the first selectman to execute in the name on behalf of the town a contract to purchase said property at the above price, subject to funds assembled from the following sources: $150,000 from the Thompson Family Foundation, Inc., a $100,000 grant from the state of Connecticut, $25,000 from the town of East Lyme, and the balance of $5,000 as may be amended by the usual and customary closing adjustments, and costs will be paid by the Friends of Oswegatchie Hills Nature Preserve, Inc. The sale is also subject to approval of the proposed purchase by the appropriate boards, commissions, agencies of the town. The first selectman is further authorized to execute a declaration of conservation easement and restrictions regarding the use of such property in favor of the Friends of the Oswegatchie Hills Nature Preserve, Inc., and to execute a conservation and public recreation easement and agreement in favor of the state of Connecticut. 2, to approve a special appropriation for a grant in the amount of $20,000 from the State Historic Preservation Office with the Department of Economic and Community Development and the CNRE Fund 32 to a budget account titled Archaeological Reconnaissance Survey with a corresponding revenue account, and forward to the Board of Finance for their approval. The survey will be of the Samuel Smith property for the purpose of being recognized as a certified local government. And that's it, right?
What about
What's this 2D? Something different.
No, I-
Right.
I think
It's not part of the town call.
No.
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 It's all right, so the call has been
I thought
raised,
so
is there a
too.
second?
Second.
I just have a question with regard to item 2 in the call. It says that we're approving a special appropriation at the town meeting for the grant. Not sure what this means forward to the Board of Finance for approval. That should already have been happened, right? We wouldn't need to have that in this call, would we?
You're right.
So then the call should be amended
To exclude that clause?
to, what we want to do is, in CNRE Fund 32, to a budget account titled Archaeological Reconnaissance Survey with a corresponding revenue account, period. Right?
Yes.
Right.
And then take
Period.
out the words "and forward to the Board of Finance
Of
for
course.
approval."
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Amend the motion.
would the
Yeah, I'll amend that motion.
I think we need the corresponding revenue account. I think that's what they're talking about, the CNRE Fund 32, putting the money in that account.
Yes.
But I don't think we need to forward to the Board of Finance for approval.
So I second the amended motion.
Are you good? Are you still
Yeah.
looking?
Just remove and forward.
That's fine, yeah. I got another one maybe just to point out, but you seconded my motion, so let's fix that one first. The other one was in the first paragraph. The sale is also subject to approval of the proposed purchase by the appropriate boards, commissions, and agencies of the town. We would have already done that by the time we hit town meeting.
That's correct.
And as I was reading it, I knew I'd go back to it. So we really don't need that in there, right? That's more
We
of a
don't.
redundant. Should we strike that as well from the motion?
The whole sentence, Mark?
Well, yeah, the sale is
Yeah.
also subject,
Mhm.
because it already would be
Yeah.
in order to get to the town meeting.
Yeah. Right.
So
So
that,
those two lines that talked about forwarding to the appropriate boards would be removed, forward or subject to approval.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
so amended here,
And re-seconded the amended,
just to be
amended
clear.
motion.
Just to really muddy it up.
Okay. All right, so we've amended the Second Amendment?
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that too much.
Oh, jeez.
Don't go
You're
there.
in trouble
No, I don't
now.
wanna do that.
Yeah,
Don't
we're
type
really-
that.
All right.
Let's
so
get out of here alive.
Any further discussion on this call? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you. The next item then would be to authorize the first selectman to sign a personal services agreement for the Bay Ruther. You have information on this?
I do. The personal service agreement is included in your packet, and that's something that the state requires anytime they give a municipality money to purchase property. You signed almost the same exact agreement in the Samuel Smith grant. And in this case, it's really just saying that you're going to comply with anti-discrimination rules if you ever build on it, and
Okay.
So it's basically boilerplate that's required when we get the money to buy property.
correct.
Because of the grant. Okay, there, it's good.
It's necessary in order to receive the grant.
Yeah, that
We
makes
have to
sense.
promise to be good kids.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Always.
yeah.
So be it resolved to authorize the first selectman to execute in the name and on behalf of the town a personal services agreement with the state of Connecticut and all agreements, contracts, and documents necessary for the purpose of receiving $100,000 from the state of Connecticut for the purchase of the property located on Assessor's Map 22, Lot 1 in abutting Quarrydock Road.
Second.
Motion made second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We have a letter from the Crescent Beach Association opting out of the golf cart ordinance. You note on their letter that they sent to me from the president, they said the golf cart, but I'm sure they meant the golf cart. So one, make sure that that's it. And two, I don't believe there any action that's required by this board to opt out. I believe that's a choice that the beach associations have been able to make under the regulation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Because it's not an ordinance, so we don't have to go to public hearing or thought on it. They're just notifying us that they have taken this action as the area that was included in the regulation. Right?
Yes, and if you'll recall, another beach community did opt out.
Right.
initially.
I think we have a couple, Adawan and
Yeah.
Oak Grove.
But this is the
Yeah,
first
it's
one.
that's
They all said,
post-
don't include us.
Yeah, post or post.
This guy said, you
decision,
know, these
right.
people said, let's get out of it after we get in it. So I just want to make sure that everybody was clear on that. And then ex officios, I know that Mr. Sawicki, I just want to mention at this time that you asked to be on the agenda, future agenda for your property. I think it would make sense, you'd have to have some letter of request for that. Coming to public delegations, I think we're all familiar with what you're doing, but perhaps you might want to speak to town council before you leave on the procedure in which you would want to make that request, so that it comes to me, and then I would be able to put it on the agenda for the board's consideration. Okay.
When I discussed it with you, I was under the impression that all
I
that
just,
had to be done is you say, okay,
I,
but that's not the case.
no, it is the case, but I just need something to bring. It's 15 acres, it's located.
Form that I fill out, submit it.
You, I think maybe the town council will be clear with you, tell you, you know, the meets and bounds, the description of the property, all of that stuff would have to be, we'd have to understand really where, I know where you're talking about because I went and looked at it, but we would need X number of feet long by X number of feet wide, located in this county, that
So
kind
you
of,
want that information before the scheduled hearing?
so we could schedule,
okay.
okay? And then
That's gonna
Ms.
take a
Con-
little while then.
Ms. Collins will help you. It's a much easier process than it sounds. Okay? Thank you. Ex officio reports?
I went to a harbor management meeting last week. They are just about ready to review the new harbor management plan that's been up for, it's been being worked on by a gentleman for the last couple of years. That should be done within the next several months. And that was it. I missed the inland wetlands because that was moved my son back to college today, so.
Okay. Ms. Hardy, anything?
The Planning Commission met last evening. One of the items on their agenda was approval of a basketball court for the middle school property. This would be an outdoor court with asphalt. The Planning Commission did an 824 review and approved the request, but it would need to be sent on to Zoning Commission.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilson?
No report.
Zoning, attended the special meeting of the zoning commission on August 14th. They had an executive session on pending litigation with JAG Capital Drive. They reconvened and scheduled a public hearing regarding JAG Capital Drive application. They reviewed the request of Gateway for determination as to whether proposed relocation of the entrance substantially conforms to the master development plan for the Gateway District, and after extensive deliberation, they voted that it in fact did, and that was basically the zoning meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Any other meetings?
I attended a Board of Education meeting, and there was discussion about procedures going forward for replacing, I went to the first one of the month, because I was confused over who, replacing the assistant superintendent, the search, and further plans for the search for the superintendent.
Right.
Parks and Rec meets tomorrow night, a special meeting before the meeting. I think they're walking in, with a filed agenda, of course. They're walking the property at McCook's Park and seeing development and construction site, etc. They're doing that, and then they're coming back for a regular meeting. One of the reports will be how favorable their revenue was this year with beach passes and all that. And I'll be able to report to you folks next meeting on that.
I can actually report to that.
Good.
Now, I feel like
I knew
it's
you did.
about 130,000 versus 110, so it's up significantly.
Significant.
The reason I asked you to stay is I have been asked by Mr. Mingo in his role as the commissioner of the land trust, or the